friend.
Are you feeling well?
Do you have any mild fevers or a sore throat?
Some eye redness, maybe a runny nose,
Muscle lateness, perhaps?
a headache.
I don't.
Then you, my friend, might be experiencing avian flu.
Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation. Welcome to Bio 3055. My name is Dr. Fabian and alongside my colleagues, Stud Butter, aka Rafael, and the local scientist, aka Pablo, we're going to be discussing avian influenza, specifically the H5N1 variant. Starting out with some general information for you guys to have a general idea of what we're talking about. Avian influenza, scientifically known as avian influenza A virus, is a highly contagious respiratory pathogen first discovered in 1878 that primarily affects aquatic or wild aquatic birds such as seagulls and domestic poultry such as chickens. Sorry about that. These viruses are characterized into two groups, low pathogenic or LPAI and highly pathogenic HPAI groups. While LPAI may only cause ruffle feathers or a drop in egg production, minor details compared to high pathogenic, HPAI strains like H5N1 can cause sudden death, neurological issues, and purple discoloration of a bird's wattle. What is that? We're going to go into more detail about the symptoms later on. The name H5N1 refers to the specific configuration of surface glycoproteins. H5 stands for hemagglutinin, the protein key used for the cellular entry, and N1 refers to the neuraminidase, the enzyme's sister used for the viral jetting. Now, going into more detail about the symptoms. The symptoms of avian influenza can vary depending on the host and the severity of the viral strain. In this case, in birds, highly pathogenic, or we're going to be more specific, the H5N1 variant, infections often result in sudden death without prior warning, but can also manifest in neurological distresses, for example, twisting of the head or lacking coordination, swelling of the head or eyelids, and a distinct purple discoloration of the combs and wattle, like previously mentioned. Now, here I have a picture of what it means by that. And as you can see, the comb and the wattle are basically the parts that are usually red on a chicken. So keep that in mind. In humans, the virus typically presents with high fevers. Oh, I'm feeling really hot. A persistent cough, fatigue, muscle aches. Oh, my muscle hurts. Oh. Nausea, severe shortness of breath, and oh, okay, well, we're by the way. So you're probably wondering what's the main difference between avian influenza and human influenza. Well, scientifically speaking, the primary difference is the optimal temperature in which each of them need to survive and the receptor specificity that each one has. Now, in human strains, they're considered to be upper respiratory specialists, which means that they are better adapted to the cooler temperatures found in the nose area. Besides that, they bind to the alpha-2,6 linksalic acid receptors, which allows them to spread easily through coughing. In contrast, avian strains are deep lung specialists, which means that they prefer the higher internal body temperature of birds and bind to the alpha-2,3 link receptors located at the very bottom of the human respiratory tract. This molecular distinction explains why bird flu is difficult to contract from another person, but exceptionally lethal once it reaches the lungs. Furthermore, HPAI strains like H5N1 possess a unique polybasic cleavage site, a feature that allows the virus to be unlocked by enzymes found throughout the entire body, not just the lungs, leading to systematic organ failure and case fatality rate exceeding 50% in humans. So in other words, it's difficult to get in, but once it gets in, the damage is already done. There's no going back. In regards with avian influenza cases, human infections are rare because the virus does not easily adapt to human receptors, which was something that was previously mentioned. However, when they do occur, particularly with the H5N1 strain, the mortality rate is high. As of early 2026, there have been approximately 993 lab-confirmed human cases reported to the World Health Organization since 2003. Out of those 993, 447 cases were fatal, which resulted in a case fatality rate of 48%. That is almost half of the people that have gotten this virus. So in other words, it is a very dangerous virus. When talking about avian influenza, specifically H5N1, we have to take into consideration the structure of the virus in order to understand its behaviors and how it penetrates the body. And for that, we have to divide it into two components, the external components and the internal components. So starting off with the external components, we have amyloidine, or H, and it's represented in a diagram as the red rod-like spikes. This is basically the key that the virus uses to unlock a host cell. It attaches itself to the receptors on the surface of your respiratory cells to let the virus inside. Next, we have the neuraminidase, or N, which is basically represented in the diagram by the blue mushroom-like shaped spikes. This is basically the scissor. After a new virus is built inside your cell, neuraminidase cuts the connection so that the new virus can break free and infect other cells. And finally, the last part that we have is the N2 or ion channel. And this is basically small channels embedded in the envelope. They act like tiny pumps that change the external acidity of the virus, which is a necessary step for the virus to uncoat itself and release genetic material once inside a cell. Now then, let's continue with the internal components. And in this part, we have only two. We have VRNP, or viral ribonucleoprotein. These are basically the instruction manuals of the virus. They consist of RNA segments wrapped in protected proteins. H5N1 has 8 of these segments, carrying all of the genetic data needed to make more viruses. And then, not least and final, we have N1, the matrix protein. This acts as a rigid shell or skeleton. It provides structural integrity to the virus and helps bundle the VRNPs together.
Bueno, les traigo una pregunta aquí. Sería, ¿por qué una persona podría infectarse con la influenza aviar? Bueno, rara vez esto infecta a los humanos, pero cuando suele pasar es porque han tenido contacto cercano y a largo plazo con aves de corral. Estos serían las aves como los pollos que están pues en gallineros. Ya esto sería pues por respiración, lo que es la saliva, la mucosidad y las heces que ellos mismos producen de los que estén infectados. Bueno, la segunda pregunta sería ¿por qué los síntomas son leves? Pues esto se lleva a cabo porque las cepas de influenza aviar terminan siendo de bajo patogenicidad. Y pues incluso también se parecen mucho a otros tipos de gripe y virus que nos terminan dando, que causan vómitos, causan fiebre, también causan malestares estomacales, dificultades en respiración, incluso también pues lo que nosotros diríamos diarrea también. Bueno, ahora les presentaré la tercera pregunta, que es ¿por qué la influenza aviar todavía no es posible ser pues transmitida entre persona a persona? Una razón es porque el virus no ha mutado lo suficiente para poder hacer brinco de humano a humano. También es pues porque este tipo de virus está adaptado para unirse a unos receptores tipo alfa 2,3 que son presentes en aves y profundos en los pulmones humanos, mientras que los virus de nosotros, los de humanos, prefieren receptores alfa 2,6 y también el en vez de ir a profundidades de los pulmones de los humanos, los nuestros son del tracto superior.
Hi there, I'm Stud, the science bud. And the only thing bigger than these biceps is a chance of getting a major pandemic from avian flu. Why is that, you may ask? Well, normally, the chances of a bird virus infecting us humans are very, very low because their RNA segments won't be able to match ours like most normal human viruses would, because the qualities of the splicing would be much different. However, if both of these viruses manage to make a cross into a new host, such as a pig, right, the RNA segments would all be rearranged from a cross effect, and this will carry on into having both qualities of the human virus and the bird virus. And the effects of this will be terrible, just terrible. Because let's say that you want to go to the supermarket and grab a nice pork chop thinking, I could grill this up for the kids or my girlfriend, right? And then they take a bite, and a few days later, dead. All because you just had to pick that pork chop. Think again. According to a report from the CDC, there have been precisely 71 cases of avian influenza in the year of 2025, with 41 of them being from dairy cattle and others being from poultry farms, with very few being from unknown sources. Although the public health risk is low, the chances of it becoming a full epidemic are still there.